Look, right now, a stranger is deciding whether to give you money. They never opened your website, they're just asking Reddit. Within the hour, some reply is going to settle that debate for them. The only question that matters is whether that reply mentions you. You see, most companies lose deals like this every single week, and they never feel it. It's not a lost deal report, there's no notification. It's just a thread that they never saw closing without them. And that's why this is a video about spying. The polite term is social listening, but to be honest, it's just spying, and it's fine because your competitors are already doing it to you. We're going to go over why the speed to the signal decides who wins, who needs to be listening, which channels leak the most, and exactly what do you do when you find something. Look, first off, the basics. Social listening is essentially monitoring the conversations you weren't invited to. Now, there are two layers. Monitoring is tracking mentions of you, and listening is the bigger game. Your competitors, your category, and the problems you solve are discussed by the people who have no idea that you exist. Well, not yet. And that second layer is where the money is, because here's a number that should really, really bother you. 96% of people discussing brands online don't even follow those brands' own profiles. If the conversation about you isn't really happening on your post, it's actually happening in comment sections, subreddits, LinkedIn posts, and tweets. Or, well, X posts, whatever you call them these days. Now, if you only read your own notifications, you're listening to the one room in the building where everyone's being polite to you, and that just doesn't count. So first off, why does speed matter? You see every public complaint, every post that goes like, hey, what does everyone use for XYZ? Every angry review of your competitor is a lead with a timestamp, and signals are like milk, not wine. So they're not going to improve with age, right? The person asking for recommendations on Tuesday has a shortlist by Thursday and a contract by the end of the month. And the data on this is old, replicated, and brutal. The first vendor to respond wins roughly half of the competitive deals. Meanwhile, the average B2B company takes about 47 hours to respond to a lead. 2 days in internet time is practically old news. Here's what this looks like when it's happening for real. You see, in August 2022, Heroku announced that it's killing its free tier, and an entire ecosystem of indie developers suddenly needs a new home. They all ask the same question in public, on Reddit, on Hacker News, on Twitter: where do I go now? Railway, Renderer, and Fly.io didn't really run ads. They shipped migration guides while the threads were still warm and answered the question by name in the comments. This is a generational transfer of customers decided in about a week, and it went to whoever was listening on the right day. The signal was super public, everyone could see it, and the winners were simply first to respond. Because being first is something subtle. The first useful reply frames the entire conversation. Because every option the buyer looks at afterwards gets compared to you. And second place isn't half as good as first here because it's mostly invisible. And the same clock runs when you're talking about defense. You see, 78% of consumers expect a brand to respond to negative comments within 24 hours. A complaint answered in an hour is customer support, but the same complaint ignored for a week, now that becomes content for your competitors. If you have a competitor whose customers complain in public, you need it because your competitor's angriest customer is your best salesperson who is unpaid. And they're extremely motivated and they post daily if they're super pissed off. If you do any kind of outbound, you absolutely need this because a signal is the difference between cold calling a job title and showing up the exact moment someone asked you to. So if you're an agency, you also need it because the second a prospect raises money or trashes their current provider in public, that is your pitch window. If you build product, you also need it because your users are writing about your feature requests and what they expect from the product and other people's comment sections. I talk to a lot of product managers who tell me that they constantly scroll through Reddit, Twitter, and other communities to make sure that they understand what their users are actually experiencing and talking about when it comes to their platforms. And if your customers can churn, you kind of need to do this nonetheless because the ones about to leave usually announce it to the internet before they announce it to you. And now I'm going to break down the different kinds of channels you should be listening to because they don't all leak the same information. You see, X is where complaints go to be seen. It's fast, it's public, it's tagged, and it's untagged. You should watch this for outages, pricing anger, and support failures, yours and your competitors. Whereas Reddit is where the truth lives. People are honest on Reddit for two reasons. They're anonymous and they're furious. When someone asks a subreddit, hey, is this tool worth it? The answers are unfiltered in a way no review site can match. And one more thing, AI models also rate Reddit. So what gets said there ends up in the answers that the machine gives. And that's why LM monitoring is another important topic, but we'll talk about that in another video. Now, LinkedIn is pretty interesting because this is where B2B buyers really think out loud, right? Stack discussions, hiring posts, thought leadership, quote unquote, and job changes, right? The one caveat about LinkedIn I'd like to point out is that I think LinkedIn, in my personal experience, people on there are just less honest than they are on places like Twitter, X, or Reddit, right? Now, the newest channel, of course, that I'll touch on a little bit is the AI model itself. So when someone asks ChatGPT, Claude, or Perplexity for the best tool in your category, an answer comes back with names in it. But 60% of Gen Z already researches through these AI overviews, and people are increasingly taking the answer without ever clicking through to the open web. Now, it's technically being forced down everyone's throat, all these AI searches, but that's just the way it is, right? So the answer is a channel now. And if you're not in it, you're invisible at the exact moment the shortlist gets made. Setting all of this up is 3 lists. List 1 is your own terms, the brand name, the product names, your domain, the misspellings, the typos, because angry people don't spell check. List number 2 is every competitor's name multiplied by the pain words. Pricing, alternative, versus, down, support, migrating, yada, yada. All of this stuff will kind of feed you leads for a year if you're in a super competitive, super public niche. And any thread titled X versus Y is a short list that's already forming in public. Now, list number 3 are the problem phrases. Now, these are the sentences that your buyers type before they know that your product or potentially even your competitor's product exists. So, for example, if you're like us and you sell outreach software, the question phrase over here would be, hey, how do you guys find leads? Or best way to track brand mentions. You see, list 3 is where the people who have never heard of anyone live, and that's what makes it the least crowded and the most valuable. Now, here's the part that almost everyone gets wrong, including myself. Let's say you found a thread and someone's asking for alternatives to your competitors. Here's what you shouldn't be doing. Writing something like, hey, check out this link. We built all of this and it's cheaper, yada, yada. That's not really listening, and communities can smell this. And one downvoted pitch can sour a subreddit on your brand for months. And I have seen brands, even in our niche, ruin their reputation just by doing this and spamming communities over and over again. Don't do that, right? The reply that works here has 3 different parts. Number 1, answer the actual question with real information, including the parts that don't involve you and even if they make you look a little bad. Second, disclose. You don't want to be quiet and hidden about this. Say something like, full disclosure, I work on a tool in this space. Earnestness wins the game, right? Because disclosure reads as confidence, and on most platforms, it's also the rule. Number 3, no link unless they ask. And I learned this the hard way several times, so please trust me when I say this. You don't want to link things in the first reply. Try to get them into your DMs, try to talk to them, try to answer their questions. Do not send them a sign-up link on the very first reply. Because you're trying to open a conversation, not close one, right? The goal is to be the absolute most useful person in that thread instead of being the absolute loudest. If you do that 10 times, just watch what happens to your inbound, because it does wear like an absolute charm. In fact, that's one of the ways at BrandJet we got our first 10 customers. And here's my attempt at being earnest. You see, tracking all these things, listening to all these conversations, then analyzing the data, processing it, and then reaching out to these leads, that's at least half a dozen platforms, if not more, a bunch of different keyword lists, a bunch of different trackers for competitors, and all these things, they really add up. They make your life an absolute nightmare, and it's not easy to track, right? And the entire point of doing this is the speed, right? As I mentioned, you have to be the first at doing this. So checking everything manually on Friday kind of defeats the purpose. Listening is super easy to understand, but brutal to do by hand, and that's exactly what BrandJet is built for, right? You set your brand, your competitors, and your keywords just once, and BrandJet listens across X, Reddit, LinkedIn, YouTube, and even TikTok, and the news in real time. Every mention comes with a sentiment attached so that the feed sorts itself into praise, problems, and opportunities tagged for you. Not to mention the fact that we even have crisis alerts that fire when there's a negative spike for your mentions or those of your competitors. The best part is that you can also reply straight from the dashboard. And if you don't feel like doing that manually, you can also automate that using our reply agents or even our lead collector agents if you just want to funnel these people into a separate outreach campaign. Now, the other thing is that BrandJet also allows you to track what ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, and all these other LLMs are trying to say about your brand and your competitors so that you always know which AI shortlist you're actually on and which ones you're missing from.
Now, if you want to run all of these analysis for the brand or the company that you're working on right now, you can do it in the next 5 minutes by going to brandjet.ai, and it's absolutely free to try. So give it a spin and let me know what you think.